Hello, my name is Margaret Kuhlow, and I'm delighted to join you this afternoon at the Phenix Virtual Impact Summit. I lead WWF's global finance practice, and while I'm disappointed we can't meet in person, I'm pleased that virtual technology can still bring us together for such important discussions. I'd like to first paint a rather grim picture and then talk about some of the solutions we already have at hand, including solutions that impact investors like you can help to support. And I want to end with some special voices to help encourage all of us to build the new system we need. The Earth is deteriorating under temperature increase from climate change and mass species decline from nature loss. Every other year, WWF publishes the Living Planet Report, a biennial review of the state of the natural world. In our most recent report, the 2020 Living Planet Index, which forms a main part of the report, showed that we've witnessed more than 2/3 average decline in vertebrate populations in the last 50 years. That's mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles, and fish. This index is really a measure of ecosystem health as much as it is a tracker of wildlife, and these results aren't good. The way we feed, fuel, and finance ourselves is pushing nature to the brink. We're using resources faster than natural systems can replenish them, and the natural capital that sustains our economies and underpins our own health and prosperity is in severe decline. Nature loss and climate change are the greatest systemic risks to our global economy. The threats reinforce each other, and together they already cause natural disasters costing more than $300 billion a year. More than 2 billion people face threats to their livelihoods, and by 2030, more than 100 million people could fall back into extreme poverty due to climate change, while more than 200 million could be displaced by more frequent and severe climatic disasters. This striking loss of nature has something in common with the rise of global pandemics. One does not cause the other, but nature loss, the rise in pandemics, and climate change too all share a significant driver: land use change. Land conversion for agriculture has caused 70% of global biodiversity loss. It also increases the probability of spillover of zoonotic diseases like COVID-19. Nature loss is expensive. Ecosystem services delivered by biodiversity, such as crop pollination, water purification, flood protection, and carbon sequestration, are vital to human well-being. Globally, these services are worth an estimated $125 to $140 trillion a year. That's more than 1.5 times the size of global GDP. With biodiversity loss, the direct effects to the real economy are rising into the billions. Roughly $400 billion of global crop output are at risk due to loss of bees and other pollinators. If this trend continues, the associated cost of inaction could rise to the equivalent of 7% of GDP by 2050. Sustainable, responsible investment is exciting and growing. It's now estimated at almost $31 trillion. That means about a third of global assets under management are under some sort of sustainable, responsible investment or SRI theme. Granted, the majority of that is a simple negative screen investment approach, and the impact focused funds are much smaller as a portion of SRI assets, but those are growing too. According to the latest report from the Global Impact Investing Network, the GIN, the impact investing universe is now roughly $715 billion. Now, when you put that in the context of the estimated value of fossil fuel subsidies is about $5.2 trillion, or 6.5% of global GDP, according to the IMF, we clearly still have our work cut out for us. But the growth in impact investing still gives me hope. It's also nice to see that impact investors are picking up green themes. When we first looked at data around environment-focused impact investing around 4 years ago, it was still quite small. According to the latest global survey from the GIN, however, the majority of impact investors are now looking for investments that reduce or prevent greenhouse gas emissions, and even a majority, that's 69%, are looking for investments for to support climate change adaptation. That's a critical nexus to investing in nature. At WWF, we've been actively examining this relationship between nature loss and business risk, nature loss and financial risk, and how to invest in nature. It's a particular area of focus now, given the potential for job-intensive investment in nature and natural systems to help us recover from the economic crisis of COVID-19 and become more resilient to the coming climate crisis. We started a number of years ago with a global program to support the development of market-based solutions to conservation through capital and capacity building. Our Impact Ventures program to date has mobilized $5 million in investment supporting 40 small and growing businesses whose business models support biodiversity. The current areas of focus are wild source and agroforestry products, marine and freshwater resources, eco-lodges, and enabling technology. We also partner with the World Bank in the African Green Outcomes Fund, Africa's first facility for access to finance for green small and growing businesses. The 20 to 50 million South African Rand Fund provides reimbursable and non-reimbursable grants in sectors like green buildings and sustainable agriculture, with a focus on green outcome measures. The fund also has an innovative tech-led reporting system to help automate outcome measurement, from data collection to tagging against the IRIS indicators and SDG metrics to the analytics and reporting, something I'm sure you can all appreciate. We've also been working to identify and develop bankable nature solutions. Those are solutions that have a positive impact on people and nature at the landscape level. They need debt or equity financing and generate a positive financial return, often by blending grant resources. Let me quickly show you an example. This is the Kafue Flats landscape in Zambia, running along the Kafue River. It's home to about 3 million people, including the Zambian capital of Lusaka. We studied this landscape and the risks it faces, from dams to population pressure, with a wide range of economic activity all along the way, from cattle and sugar production to industrial activity, all dependent on the water resources of the Kafue River and the Kafue Flats. To help protect this landscape, we identified a range of investments, some grant, like the $5 million restoration of the Blue Lagoon National Park, to the $50 million bankable water treatment system. This experience was also critical to the formation of a major new initiative, the Dutch Fund for Climate and Development. Together with the Dutch Development Finance Institution, FMO, climate fund managers, and the Dutch NGO SNV, WWF is part of a 160 million euro facility to expand investment in nature. The DFCD was launched in November of 2019 as a pioneering consortium of a DFI, an asset manager, and 2 NGOs. It has 3 facilities: grant, debt, and equity, and 4 investment themes: water, environmental protection, agriculture, and forestry. The fund is expected to mobilize an additional 500 million euro in private finance. The purpose of the fund is to help close the financing gap to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals and invest in climate resilience in vulnerable countries. By working together, this consortium hopes to develop blueprints for bankable nature solutions, including nature-based solutions to climate change. The focus is in low and middle-income countries and reaching environmental outcomes. I've incorporated the website for the DFCD as well. It's actively searching for investments, and we encourage you to join us in this effort. But now I really want to let you hear from others. This video is part of a beautiful set of films that WWF produced together with Netflix and Silverback Films called Our Planet. This is an excerpt from a finance-focused film called Our Planet: Too Big to Fail. We produced it to bring voices from the sector to bear witness to the need and opportunity for change. Let's watch and listen.
Our economic system is underpinned by the services of nature and the stability and resilience it provides. But flaws in the finance system have helped tarnish our natural world.
The impact of climate change and nature loss becomes increasingly difficult to predict into the future and even more complex to ensure.
What's the point of receiving a pension when our children cannot even play outside?
Revolutions happen when the majority of people think that it's a mistake to try and block change.
In the terminology, it would be a climate Minsky moment. And that's what we need to avoid, which is why we need to start moving today.
Do we invest money in the practices that take us deeper into this crisis, or in the solutions that could get us out of it?
Our finance sector has unwittingly bankrolled the destruction of the very natural systems it relies upon.
Since the Paris Accord was signed in 2015, banks globally have continued to invest $1.9 trillion into the fossil fuel industry, and that's despite knowing where that's leading and what the consequences are.
The financial system is not doing a great job of distinguishing between good and bad growth.
Putting ourselves on a trajectory to devastate the natural world and our way of life forever. But our future doesn't have to be this way. Our finance system needs systemic change.
The financial sector is an enormously powerful and effective force and can be a force for good.
No sector is better placed to drive the transition to a sustainable economy than the finance sector itself.
The public needs you to take the lead and needs you to be brave.
And building a better system can start now, with 5 key actions. As we move to a sustainable economy, all companies, banks and investors will need to understand where they are vulnerable.
There's the physical risks. What will flooding, wildfires, and many other major events mean for the portfolios of banks? There's the reputational risk of not being seen to act on climate change or financing things that are creating other environmental or social consequences.
As companies adapt to meet net zero targets, they will also face transitional risks.
If we continue to downplay the scale of the transition across all economies around the world, then the adjustment, when it comes, will be much more severe. The biggest risk is inaction today.
The finance system has the ability to dial up the positive and drastically dial down the negative impacts of every decision made.
ESG, or environmental, social and governance reporting, should be the bare minimum for all companies.
ESG is great, but it's quite narrowly conceived at the moment.
We need to go much further.
What we need is for financial institutions to demonstrate and report on how they are reducing their impact on the natural world.
Those responsible companies that start accurately monitoring and reporting their impact and risks will thrive. Those that don't will be left behind. Shareholders are just one part of the picture. We need to recognise that investors, customers, employees, all stakeholders are changing.
So there's a really interesting shift, and I hear this from people who work in finance. They say, we've got new clients. It's actually opening up new demand in the financial sector to come up with financial portfolios that don't just extract revenue, but that invest in the future.
This changing financial landscape heralds the end of business as usual, but brings with it an exciting world of new opportunities.
Achieving net zero requires a whole economy transition. Every company, every bank, insurer, investor will have to adjust their business models. But doing so could turn an existential risk into the greatest commercial opportunity of our time.
The clean energy sector is already exploding. And the entire food sector is transforming too.
Within a decade, alternative meat proteins are expected to grab over 10% of the 1.4 trillion meat market.
Taking society and the environment into account in all our actions will soon be business critical. Fortunately for the finance sector, the opportunities and benefits to society are endless. We need to build a finance system which is recalibrated to the long term, one that is transparent, so all investors can see what their money is funding, and one that takes climate, nature, and social development into account in all financial decisions.
The finance sector plays a crucial role in the fight against climate change, but it cannot do it alone. We need a coordinated response across many sectors: government, energy, technology, the legislative and regulatory environment, bringing all these together to make a meaningful impact.
The thing that gives me hope is that people are rethinking how capitalism should be structured at the top table. It's huge. And if they're successful, then we will live in a much more sustainable future. If they do not succeed, then the economies will collapse and civilization itself is at risk.
As we navigate our way through the biggest economic crisis since the Second World War, the existential threats from climate change and nature loss are still looming. Now is the moment to reframe our idea of value and build a new system, one that will safeguard ourselves from future global shocks. If we do this, we'll be leaving a legacy of which we can feel justly proud.
To close, I want to thank the Phenix Virtual Impact Summit organizers for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. And I hope you'll all join in understanding and minimizing your risks, declaring and halting your negative impacts, considering all the stakeholders, seizing new opportunities, and building the new system we need. Thank you very much.